I'm Sam Roberts of the New York Times, and welcome to the New York Times Close Up. This week, the New York Historical, its president, Louise Mirrer, joins us to discuss the city's 400th birthday and the 250th of the Declaration of Independence. But first, I'd like to welcome New York Times reporters Dana Rubinstein and Mihir Zaveri. Their coverage has been providing Times readers with timely insights and in-depth analysis of the candidates and key issues in the mayoral race. Welcome to both of you. We are taping this program before the Thursday night debate, so we're a little bit at a disadvantage. But Mihir, is this a two-man race now?
I mean, that's how it's being framed, but our voting system is unique. We have ranked choice voting, so you don't know what's going to happen. And there's still some time left. There's a debate coming up, as we've talked about, that could change things. I would say it's probably too early to just confidently say that.
We're waiting till the 24th, which is a little bit away. Dana, what is the defining issue or the defining pivotal event in this campaign? What is going to change people's minds, if anything?
I mean, I don't know what will change people's minds, but to Mihir's point, there is still some time left. The defining issues appear to be affordability, public safety, and who will be best equipped to face off against Donald Trump. That those are the issues that are shaping the race.
Are they really that different on those issues? I mean, everyone's for affordable housing. Everyone is for more public safety. And, these guys both say they can stand up to Trump easily.
Sure. I mean, it's a Democratic primary, so the differences are are shades of differences, not like huge abysses between them. But yeah, they're a little bit different. Mamdani wants to create a Department of Public Safety and sort of get more social workers into the subways and stuff like that, rather than rely as heavily on police. Cuomo argues that Mamdani, who is only 33 and has very limited work experience, lacks the gravitas and experience to actually stand up to Trump. So yeah, there are differences in style and a little bit in substance for sure, but to your point, they're all Democrats.
Mihir, is it a choice, if it comes down to those two, of a guy with administrative experience, Andrew Cuomo, and Mamdani, who is somebody totally fresh and new, with new ideas, for better or worse, and some imagination?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, let's take housing, for example, right? You mentioned affordability. Housing is probably the key piece of that. I think between Cuomo and Mamdani, you actually have somewhat of a difference of visions. I think at this point in the campaign, everyone's going to say stuff that's probably not that realistic, that's probably, a little bit pie in the sky, but it'll tell you which direction they're going. Cuomo has been backed by real estate. He's just got a pretty
Is that a bad thing? I mean, we always couch it that way. Look at the real estate people, the developers supporting a candidate. Can you make an argument that they think the city will be better for them,
sure,
and for everyone if that candidate wins?
Yeah, I mean, and I would say one thing that you're noticing in this primary, all of the Democratic candidates are pro-development across the board.
Which is a real change.
Which is a change. It's a change. Even Mamdani is someone who wants to build a lot of housing, like 200,000 housing units, mixed income, focusing on affordable housing, a lot of subsidies. So it's not about, it's just, I think when you see where the money's coming from and who's backing each candidate and what they're saying, you generally know which direction they're going to go in.
So how do Mamdani and Cuomo differ on housing? Yeah,
so Cuomo is taking, he was the governor who helped real estate win some pretty big tax breaks through known as 421A, very controversial, many people know about it. But he also signed into law one of the most sort of sweeping tenant protections in recent memory, known as the HSTPA. Mamdani, though, is he's sort of like, I'm going to thread these needles, focus on development. Mamdani is very much, I'm going to freeze your rent. I'm a pro-tenant advocate. So it's like a progressive vision versus a more moderate vision.
And
Dana,
also
go ahead.
His proposal for housing, the 200,000 units, correct me if I'm wrong, but they'd all be affordable, correct?
They'd all be affordable, yeah.
And they'd all be built purportedly with union labor.
Purportedly,
which, I mean, there's some issues with how the numbers may or may not pencil out there.
I think he's putting the price tag at $100 billion. So
Yep.
It's a rhetorical question, but I always wondered why we refer to, when we talk about housing, to units instead of apartments. I don't know anyone who lives in a unit. Is the election a choice among people that the voters dislike the least, or do you detect any real enthusiasm for a particular candidate?
I mean, it seems like Mamdani is the enthusiasm candidate, and Cuomo is I think Mitchell Moss put it in the opinion pages today as like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it does seem like the enthusiasm, particularly the youth enthusiasm, is behind Mamdani, and the sort of older voters are behind Cuomo. And the question is, who will actually turn out to vote? I mean, young voters have less of a track record of turning out
Right.
in mayoral elections, and but if Cuomo is a candidate that people are holding their noses for to vote, I'm not sure, does that drive people to the polls, or are they like, I'm just not going to even bother?
Mihir, what about endorsements? Big endorsement from Mike Bloomberg for Cuomo this past week. Do they really matter? Do people really care? Does that carry over?
I mean, it's a controversial topic, right? I mean, our own opinion pages have wrestled with this issue themselves, but I think it does signal which camp you're in a little bit, right? I mean, Mayor Bloomberg was known as someone who managed the city, and if he's endorsing Cuomo, it kind of speaks to what Dana was talking about earlier. It's like the devil you know, the person who can get stuff done. Mamdani, famously has AOC's endorsement, right? And so that's someone who's kind of representing the left-leaning progressive vision.
Dana, a question a little bit close to home. The Times is no longer endorsing local candidates. Do the candidates feel a void because there's not going to be any Times endorsement? Usually they will plaster that all over their leaflets and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Let's not forget that in 2021, the Times endorsement of Catherine Garcia helped propel her to a very close, 7,000 vote second place finish behind Adams in the primary. So they do really, really matter in local elections.
And second place finishes really matter in ranked choice voting. But explain to me, we're voting on June 24th. When are we going to know who won?
Well, it depends. I mean, if someone breaks 50%, then we'll just have a winner, right? But they're not going to actually run the official tallies, I believe, until the following week. So,
And then it seems like our general election is going to be somewhat interesting.
oh yeah, our general I mean, this is the extremely rare modern New York City election where the primary does not just basically determine the ultimate outcome, right? The November election does matter. Eric Adams will run on an independent line. Cuomo is saying that he might run on an independent line.
Even if he loses
the primary. Mamdani, if he loses, might run on the Working Families Party line. And then there's independent candidate Jim Walden, and of course Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa. And there is no ranked choice in the general election, so it will matter.
Why, you may not know the answer to this, and certainly I don't, but why is there ranked choice voting in a primary and not in the general election?
Actually, don't know the answer, but it's a good question.
Okay, we'll answer that next week. The debates matter. We talk about endorsements, obviously debate Thursday night. Has a debate ever changed an outcome?
I mean, we don't. I feel like we don't. Our memories can't forget the recent presidential debate, which pretty much determined the path of.
Sure.
Good
Joe
example.
Biden, yeah.
But and in the last mayoral debate, Michael Blake, a candidate relatively unknown,
Sure.
had quite a moment, and people got to know him a little bit more. So, yeah, I think if you say and do the right, it's rare, I imagine, to really, really distinguish yourself in a crowded field where, again, the policy differences aren't as strong as, say, like a Republican Democrat, but they could matter.
And what about ballot order? Ranked choice voting, obviously that doesn't matter. You're making the order yourself.
Right. I mean, I do think that there is some slight advantage that accrues to the person whose name comes up first, but I don't think it's all that meaningful.
Negative campaigning, how much has that gone on?
It's gone on and it's gaining steam, which, makes sense. Ranked choice voting is supposed to sort of cut down on negative campaigning because you want the votes of, the second choice votes of your competitors.
Right. You can't be against all of them.
Sure, but certainly Cuomo is, and the super PAC that's supporting him is doing plenty of negative campaigning against Mamdani, and all the other Dems, including Mamdani, are doing plenty of negative campaigning against Cuomo, and I assume that will just continue to pick up. And Mamdani himself might be more of a target from his fellow Dems other than Cuomo, because he is himself becoming, it's like there are two front runners at this point. And it's Mamdani and Cuomo, and their front runners always attract, the most barbs.
I'm assuming, and I may be wrong, that many of our viewers are not tied up with social media constantly. They have lives to live. What impact does that have in campaigns, and how are they using it this time differently than has been done before?
Yeah, I think typically you'll have certain candidates that are more polished on social media and that can harness it to generate momentum. If you look at a lot of Mamdani's design messaging, sort of how they're reaching voters, it's very built on this idea that that it is a sort of social media fueled campaign in many ways, in ways that other campaigns don't necessarily have the same sort of appeal to that kind of vote. So it matters. Then there's always the question of disinformation, misinformation. We know that social media these days is a little bit less regulated by the companies themselves than it used to be. So, the wrong thing, the wrong message can take fire easily and can hurt a campaign.
Mihir, explain to me and explain to some of our viewers what using social media in a campaign actually means.
Sure.
If I'm on Google or if I'm looking at the news at nytimes.com, where and how do I get those messages from the candidates, whether I want them or not?
You could get video ads on Instagram, Facebook. You could get, each candidate and campaign will have their own Twitter accounts, and they'll be tweeting hot takes and things like that. If you're going to be watching the debate, you will see, I'm sure, a lot of Twitter action going back and forth from the candidates where their campaigns are calling out other candidates or whatnot. And so once bots or people who actually see these, they can amplify those using their, using my own. If I was a supporter of Mamdani's, I could retweet, a video of his that said something or a clip of what he said, and that kind of becomes a moment.
Free advertising. We didn't talk about money. How big a factor is that going to be in the campaign? Andrew Cuomo has a mammoth war chest. We're not totally certain whether his PAC could use that legally, although it has. Is money a factor?
His PAC, just to be clear, hasn't used his state war chest. They've raised money independently. But
to do what with?
To run ads and send out mailers and just sort of bring Cuomo's argument, his case, to voters. Mm-hmm. And they're spending that money, and it is the it's been they've been very successful in fundraising. So yeah, he has a money advantage, but you can't actually buy elections, and it doesn't always work out.
We are being governed by the Citizens United case in the Supreme Court, but how separate is that PAC really from the Cuomo campaign?
The PAC will tell you that they do maintain a firewall and do not talk with the campaign itself, but there are legal, if sort of line blurring methods of communication, and one of them is a red box, they call it, which is legal nationally, but actually not in New York City, where a campaign can put a messaging that they want their supporters to use on their website, and then the super PAC can look at the website and, glean what they want from it. So Cuomo's campaign did put up a so-called red box, and the campaign finance board did penalize them for it. Did penalize, both of them for it.
Thank you both for joining us. Mihir Zaveri and Dana Rubinstein of the New York Times. Coming up next, celebrating New York history with the New York Historical. We're now joined by Louise Mirrer, the president of the New York Historical. She's a leading historian, head of the city's first museum. She's at the forefront of New York's 400th anniversary celebrations and next year's 250th anniversary of the nation's founding. This is the 400th anniversary of the city's birthday. It was either last year, this year, or next year, depending on how you count, but it doesn't seem like too many people are celebrating. And Louise, let me ask you, with all the things people think are wrong with New York, what is it that we're celebrating?
Well, I can tell you what we're celebrating and have been celebrating at the New York Historical, which is really the themes, the sentiments of toleration that the Dutch brought to New York. Not everyone will be enthusiastic about my characterization because, of course, the Dutch brought slavery to New York. They brought the first enslaved people to New York. They did not, in New Amsterdam, have great relations with the indigenous population. However, in terms of a kind of American DNA before the United States was the United States, they did have a sense of toleration. That,
in their own interest, because they wanted to make money.
Of course, it was, in their own interest, but nevertheless, you could have argued that for England. You could have argued that for France or, virtually any other.
They weren't as smart.
Maybe that's true. But the Dutch understood that to get on in the world, you really did not need to have all this baggage about religious purity, for example, as in Spain, or a national church, as in England, and so on and so forth.
New Yorkers don't know much about history, and visitors from out of town in this country and abroad don't come to New York as a historical destination. But as you've pointed out before, and the New York Historical stresses certainly in everything it does, New York was instrumental in the American Revolution, both the war itself and then afterward. We were the first capital of the country. Hardly anyone knows that.
It is remarkable that so little attention is paid to New York's centrality in the history of the nation. I think, that's largely because New York is a tear-down, build-up city. We don't really respect historic landmarks, and that's also why we're all here. If we wanted to be in a place that changed very little and reminded us of the past all the time, we might live in Charleston, South Carolina. Philadelphia and Boston, both of them, have done much better jobs of centering their destination for tourists in history than we have, but we've got other things that people come here for. So
it's a little bit of an exaggeration, of course, but Ken Jackson likes to say that Boston, Philadelphia, Jamestown have nothing else but their history. We obviously have a lot more to offer, even if we, I think, mistakenly overlook it. One of the things I noticed looking at the website, you have exhibits on Blacks, Jews, women, Chinese Americans, gay pride, Native Americans. How do you deal these days with diversity when it's sort of become a dirty word?
Well, we're a very diverse nation. Whether you like the word or not, it does qualify us as what we are. We're a nation, certainly we're a city that has always welcomed people from abroad. If you look back at New Amsterdam, it was a polyglot city. It was by no means a homogeneous city, which was true in other early American cities. New York was not founded as a place where you could, for so-called religious freedom, which meant religious freedom for you,
right,
and people like
you. For the people like you.
It wasn't anything like that. So from our very beginning, we were a city that was welcoming and accepting. And as a nation, I think we still like to think, or many of us still like to think of ourselves that way, as having benefited from diversity rather than suffered from it. And So, you know, our outlook is we have our mission. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and disseminate the stories of the American past. And we've doubled down on our mission, if anything, and that means that we will continue to tell the stories of the great American diversity.
Does it surprise you at all that you, Tim Zagat, John Catsimatidis seem to be about the only ones who realize this is the city's birthday and doing something about it?
It really does surprise me because, you know, anniversaries are great moments to put on big shows and big spectacles and do
to
all
reflect.
sorts of things. And to reflect back. So it does surprise me that, and we have, you know, we have obviously done our best. We did an exhibition, 2024 exhibition, which reflected on, it was called New York Before New York. Russell Shorto, my colleague, curated that exhibition, and it really, you know, it brought a lot of people, we had lots and lots of visitors. You know, usually when that happens, people sustain the momentum for a while, but it does, you know, seem to have gone in fits and starts. We do plan another capstone 400th anniversary. You know, you preface by saying, you know, it could be 24, it could be 25, could be 26. Well, we're calling it 26 and celebrating the 400th anniversary of New Amsterdam with an exhibition that takes us back to old Amsterdam with an exhibition drawn from the great old master of Dutch painters that helps us to recognize, you know, again, that word, the diversity of people who the Dutch old master artists depicted. And because we obviously don't have photographs from that period or, you know, other depictions of what people looked like and were doing, we are using them to remind people of our city's founding.
And a good book on Amsterdam by Russell Shorto, in fact. When did the New York Historical Society, which, as I mentioned, is the city's original or first museum, when did it lose its society? When did it become the New York Historical, which I don't know if is grammatically correct, but tell me.
Well, you know, we're not too. You know, I try to be
Is
very
society
grammatical
just,
in most things.
you know, too fuzzy and?
Well, I think society characterized our founding. In 1804, we were a society. We were a membership organization. We were founded by 11 men who were visionary in their understanding. They'd all lived through the American Revolution. And they understood that if you didn't collect and preserve the effects of their own history, not to mention their own participation in that history, that it would turn to, as they said, nothing but dust and speculation. But it was a closed institution. It wasn't an institution that said, you know, anyone can come, history is open to all. Our, you know, premise has been that everyone learns from history. Everyone should learn from history. And, you know, our first sort of foray into opening up the topic was the big renovation that we did. We put in as much glass as we could get away with.
Tell us about the new wing.
Yeah, so sure. So, you know, after many, many years, we have decided to build on property that we've had since 1937 that was purchased, in fact, to expand our educational program.
This is just west of the existing
Just west
building.
of the existing building. And we hired a great architect, Robert Stern, and he has created a new wing for us, which on the exterior will look identical to the original building, which actually is two buildings, the original one and 1937 addition. But on the interior will give us the opportunity to increase the number of students that we serve above all. And the top floor will be dedicated to telling the story of LGBTQ plus history, the LGBTQ plus museum space.
And also the Academy for American Democracy.
Yes, and in fact, the new wing is called the Tang Wing for American Democracy, and that is, another theme that we have doubled down on. We think people don't really understand what democracy is, what it means, and we intend to educate as many young people as possible around it.
One of the things you're doing to educate, part of the First Amendment, of course, is an exhibition coming up on the Blacklist. Give us a little preview.
So, the Hollywood Blacklist was an effort in the 40s in the wake of a great Red Scare to root out anyone who might have communist sympathies. In fact, many people had communist sympathies, but not Stalin version communism, but rather they
weren't
concerned.
resurrectionists.
Yeah, no. They were, these were people who were concerned about harsh labor conditions. They were concerned about discrimination against blacks. They were concerned about a whole host of social justice issues. And they saw the Communist Party was the only, fully integrated party. It was the only, only organization really that was sort of, hospitable to people with those progressive views. And so many people joined, not, not reflecting one way or another. They weren't anti-American, but they were deemed anti-American.
And they suffered for it.
They suffered hugely. Many people lost their livelihoods. They lost their citizenship. It was a horrific, horrific moment. And what we saw was a real challenge to American First Amendment rights. And it is a story that is particularly timely today. We decided to take the exhibition a couple of years ago, and we thought it was timely then. Already, books were being banned, teachers were being fired for teaching concepts that were, just considered to be inappropriate along ideological lines. But, now 2 years later is even more timely because we do see an erosion of First Amendment rights now. And this exhibition shows, above all, that, this will happen until somebody stands up or somebody stand up and say, this is un-American. Mm-hmm. This is the true un-American behavior.
Right. That's what it means to be an American. Thank you, Louise Mirrer, the President and Chief Executive of the New York Historical. I recommend the store, which is a great place to find New Yorkana. That's it for this edition of Close Up for the New York Times and CUNY TV. I'm Sam Roberts. And don't forget to download the CUNY TV app. You can catch our weekly program on the go anytime, anywhere.